Hello, welcome to CLSP Politics. Sean Briscoe speaking. So, this is part three. Like, back in the day, uh, they used to lie to us about why they were going to war. You know, freedom, America, all that stuff. Well, Trump's just out flat out saying oil. This is why we're going oil. And so, oil then. Let's look at the oil question. What does that exactly look like? I mentioned it, of course, in the previous videos because it's important. It's why the Trump administration is going there. They're also going to stick it to Cuba and stick it to China and do all this other stuff. And how real is that? So let's look at that. I kind of went down the rabbit hole policy wise and kind of learned a lot about Venezuela, put it that way. Jeez Louise. So let's start. Okay. So Venezuela, we got to start what the country actually looks like and what the various different areas are. So, so the most important thing I want you guys to look at is this mountainous region, right? That basically cuts through the entire northern part. And then you've got the coastal areas, which are a little bit better, but it's still on a very sharp trajectory down, right? And then you got the savanna and the plains areas. That's where the oil's at, along with the mountainous areas over there by Lara and Trujillo. Also, I apologize if I destroy various different names of towns in this process, but I'm working on it. So really it's savanna plains area that we're going to be looking at. Guarico is kind of the center of this giant thing that they call, the oil. It's where the oil's at. Turns out Venezuela generates most of its power by hydroelectric, not oil at all. It does use fossil oils for, a little over almost a third, just shy of a third of all of its power needs. It does a little bit of coal. Mostly, I mean, the vast majority is hydroelectric. They have a lot of rivers and they're using them. And that's how they generate their power, because what we're going to find out is that the type of oil that they have is very, very, very energy. It takes a lot of energy to make this oil usable, right? It's the most expensive kind of oil that you can possibly make in the world comes out of Venezuela, right? So when they talk about the oil reserves and this big giant chunk of oil, what are they talking about? Well, these are the primary oil fields. And we'll talk about another bit of oil fields, but if they're talking about oil in Venezuela, this is what they're talking about. It's inland, and basically you've got 4 large areas, of which the three there that are like 1, 2, 3, the I would say Junin, Aliacho, and Carabobo, those are all more or less worked. They have the they had infrastructure in there 25, 30 years ago. They're technically still online, although degradation is insane. But they're full on like 150 kilometers or like 100 miles from the coast. So you've got to move all those resources 100 miles in pipelines. It's the only way to do it. And then that's what they did, right? They've built out those little red lines are pipelines, and the red areas are the oil fields. And the one over there at Maracaibo, ooh, sorry, this is gonna get rough. I warned everyone at the beginning. That's over by a lake, and it makes up a very, very, very small portion of the oil that Venezuela produces. The Orinoco Belt, that's the one everyone's talking about, right? So you have these 100-mile pipelines that honestly are 30 years too old. They haven't been upgraded in decades, and if you notice, they all kind of go right into Puerto Jose, right? And that's what we call a bottleneck. It's bad, always bad, right? Everything's got to flow into there. And when you want to talk about, you know, going into Caracas and doing what we did, it only takes 5 or 6% of the population to not like that, to cause you problems. These lines, you can't guard every foot of these pipelines. You can't bury them because you need to get to them if they leak. So they go right there over the surface, and you got to guard them. There's no other way to do it. You have to guard them. And so you have what looks like to be 700-800 miles worth of pipelines right now, just what they've got going right now that you'd have to guard. That's like guarding an 800-mile border. Ask Russia how easy that is to do. Yeah. So yeah, that Lake Carbo. Anyway, the lake over there, and then the oil, the Orinoco oil belt. That's where all the everything is, and those are the pipelines. And there's, it's rough. It gets actually way worse. But I wanted everyone to understand what we're talking about, because I'll be honest, when they say oil, oh, it's on the coast, is what I was told, and I was like, really? Well, that's convenient. Glad to see it's on the no, that's not the fact. It's 100 miles inland. It is not on the coast. So I kind of dug around and just came up with some numbers, right? So it's trillion barrels of and of heavy oil. This is like the heaviest of oil. And yeah, it's the largest in the world. It's the biggest source of oil, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than everybody. You got the lake, which is that one that's further west. That one is much smaller, slightly easier oil to refine, but also considered very heavy. It takes a lot of work, and we're gonna get into that. But before we do, real quick, like and subscribe if you haven't. You can go to my PayPal if you want to contribute to this page. I'm not monetized by YouTube. I don't make any money from any commercials that you've been annoyed by. So the only way this channel keeps going is by donations, and I've got a few people that have been really, they've been great. So if you'd like to join that team, we'd love to have you. So you can go to my YouTube, my Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, Substack. If you want to just become a member of my Substack, that's great. If you want to donate directly through PayPal, I've got the link on my YouTube. That'd be awesome. If you're running for office and you have a question, policy, logistics, whatever, you can go to my website, or you can just email me at Sean@CLSP Great. Okay. So breaking down the areas that that they've got, right? So you've got the Orinoco Belt, which is the big one, right? It's extra heavy crude. It's insane. It's almost like you compare it to molasses, right? It's that thick. You have to break it down before you can even put it in a pipe. Like, you pull it out of the ground, then you basically dilute it so that it flows at all. Because, I mean, try taking molasses and trying sucking it up a straw. That's effectively the amount of energy required to pull this stuff out of the ground. It's incredible. The Maracabio, I'm gonna have to eventually just decide on a translation. The lake basin, the second largest, is not as heavy, but still heavy. You know, It's heavier than many global benchmarks, so it's better than molasses, slightly, I guess, less viscous. And then they've got some other areas there, like crude, but they make up just an insanely small fraction of the total oil that they've got. So how hard is it to extract and move this Venezuelan oil? It's really hard. All right. So there's two things they have to do. They have to add a diluent to blending it so that you can even move it through the pipelines, right? Diluting it from that molasses super thick product to something that's a little bit more, you can put it through a pipe. And then once it gets those facilities, uh, they have to convert that heavy oil into synthetic lighter crude that can then be more easily shipped and refined. So, like our facility, and we'll get into the facilities here in the United States that are designed around literally this kind of crude. We can absolutely take this crude, but they have to even break it down further. Like I said, this goes through two major processes before it even gets into a tanker and it's headed anywhere, right? Without blending and upgrading the oil, it just gets stuck in the pipelines. You cannot move it. You can't put it in a tanker because you can't get it out of the tanker. It's just a real pain in the butt. So when I said that in one of my previous videos, someone says it's an a-hole of oil, that's what I mean. You've got to process this stuff twice before you can do anything with it. It's crazy. So when we're talking about infrastructure, uh, so you need large industrial plants to upgrade it, and they're highly capital intensive. I mean, they're very expensive to build and operate, and most of the infrastructure right now is non-functional. Period. So huge upgrades need to be in the processing and upgraders for the oil. We've got to put those in. They don't exist otherwise, right? So the Venezuela will bring in lighter crudes to blend with the heavier oil. So they are an importer. Keep in mind, the largest supply of oil of any country in the world is an importer of oil because they have to dilute the oil they've got to make it even functional. So the first thing they're going to have to deal with is that, right? You haven't made $1 yet. This oil's only costs money so far, right? It's incredible. So you have to put it in the boats, right? You got to move that oil. So all of their pipelines, all of their network is just old. Like I said, they need 900 miles of upgraded pipeline replacements just to get this crude moving again. 900 miles of pipes. Keep in mind, this is also, there are no roads, no real roads, no roads for heavy equipment. There might have been roads for heavy equipment 24 years ago, but since then, jungle, rain, that kind of thing. It's not an environment that's conducive to infrastructure. I grew up on an island that was not on the equator, but 13 degrees north of the equator. And I'll tell you, roads, paths, pipes, everything rusts, everything degrades. Erosion's just part of it. So it's not only do we repair it all, you have to maintain it all, and that's a whole nother chunk of change. So the export terminals and storage. Okay, so the storage units are corroded and collapsed, most of them, and that limits because if you can't hold it, you can't fill it up and then move it to the tanker, right? Tanker's not going to sit out there while you slowly drip. They want to get in there, load up, and get out. So it means you need storage tanks, and they've got the two ports that historically have done this, but they're both in huge needs of investment. I mean, billions of dollars in capital. The other basins are just about as the wells are aging, facilities are downgraded. Do you see a theme here? There's no there. Sure, there's this molasses oil down there in and they're 100 miles from the shore, but you still have to move it, and they can't move it. They lack the infrastructure to do that. So what Trump's saying is that we're going to pay for that, or the oil's going to pay for it. Dude, anyway, yeah, that lie. Heard that lie a bunch. So they're saying tens of hundreds of billions of dollars. I was told it was somewhere between 52 and 58 billion. That's not what the experts are saying now. The experts are saying tens of hundreds of billions of dollars. So $500 billion, maybe the high end. That's insane. These are kind of the factors, right? You've got the reserves are there, they're massive. The oil quality is garbage, 100%. It's just the worst oil in the world. The extraction is a pain in the ass. Infrastructure is degraded, needs major investment, i.e., the $500 billion, probably. No one knows. And then, and they haven't been able to produce anything close to a historical peak for a very long time. And their historical peak was 10 years ago. And that's when they just started really running into a problem where they didn't have the resources to rebuild the infrastructure that was built. Plus, with the government change and all the stuff, they kind of kicked out all the people that were experts, and the ones that were experts that could get out got out. And I think a lot of them just got killed. So it was pretty rough all around. And now they're popping around 20 million tons per year, which I mean, Texas produces way more than that. I mean, it's not even close. So obviously the other big thing is China, right? China. That's what Trump's always talking about, is China, right? Okay. China takes 80% of the oil that comes out of Venezuela. You're like, wow, 80%. That's incredible. They must be funding no, they take it as pet debt repayments. China bought a bunch of their bonds and said, hey, instead of paying on these bonds, how about you just give us oil? The deal. That's what China did. Nice deal if you can get it, right? So it's not like, this is basically just paying off debt. We did buy a lot of oil from them back in the day, but then of course governments change and things happen. So we still have the infrastructure, of course, because we never stopped, pulling in oil, and we're a huge market, right? So obviously we continued to, do this. What's interesting is that if Venezuela does come online and we do spend the $500 billion or whatever that terrible amount of money is going to be, we can displace Canada's heavy crude with that, which I'm not sure why you'd want to do it, but you can. India is also a huge. I mean, China gets 80%. So whatever's left, India picks up. And they've got the refineries to pull that in. So, but mostly they just, get their oil from Russia and in the Middle East. Venezuela's oil is just really kind of expensive. Yeah. And then you've got like some smaller volumes that go to Spain, Cuba, and other countries, and that's mostly on a barter and subsidized deal. So really China's probably bankrolling that for all intents and purposes, with their 80% purchase to either offset debt or give revenue to the state. And as far as the ones that can do it, so everyone's like, well, so we open up Venezuela, let's say the taxpayers foot the $500 billion bill. Well, Valero, Marathon, ExxonMobil, and Chevron, they have the capacity to process this oil. So I guess they'll be fine. Don't worry. Oil companies will be just fine. Yeah. Oh, they're not going to spend their money. They're not going to spend their money to put in the infrastructure in Venezuela, right? They're not going to do that. Why? It's quite simple. If you put more product on the world market, the price of a barrel goes down. That's bad for their business. They don't want another competitor, much less the largest, proven supply of oil in the world coming online. That's not in their best interest. That's just bad business. So yeah, don't look to these guys to foot the bill because they don't want the oil on the market. They don't even like the barrel as low as it is right now. You put something like that on the market, good luck. Uh, so China also, of course, because it's been pulling in 80% of what little has been produced by Venezuela over the last decade, and they built their refineries to be able to handle that stuff. So no supply. I mean, no surprise that they can handle that supply. And India also has very, very high tech, complex refinery because India gets their oil from wherever they can get it. So they can actually refine all sorts of different types of oil. Doesn't really matter where they're coming from. Uh, and just so we're all clear, you hear Trump talk about it and you hear the Republicans talking about it, you'd think, oh, China gets 90% of their oil from Venezuela. We're going to cut them off. It's going to be brutal. They'll never survive. They get 4, maybe 4.5% on a good year of their oil from Venezuela. And they basically use as a write-off to offset debt in another country. So it's like barely even a revenue source. But hey, the Republicans are going to stick it to China 4.5%. Give me a break. Yeah, that's kind of a joke. China, if you want to talk about where China's getting their oil from, no, about 20% of it, 1 in 5 barrels comes from Russia. Remember, they're bankrolling the Ukraine war. Without China buying Russia oil, there is no Ukraine war. Never forget that. Saudi Arabia, also huge supplier. And Iraq, again, huge supplier. Then it kind of just drops off. There's a few other smaller ones out there, but the vast majority of them are Russia at 20%, Saudi Arabia bouncing between 14 and 16, Iraq's at 12, and then, UAE, Kuwait, others. And most of that actually, whatever's left over, that chunk there, maybe Iran a little bit. Iran likes to run oil through other countries to kind of obfuscate sanctions. So there might be some Iranian oil going to China. They're just, such great actors in the world stage. Really, really, enjoying, sending money to these guys. It's ridiculous. So the big lie is, well, actually, it's not a big lie. They're saying, oh, we're going after the oil. The big lie behind the truth they're saying about the GOP wanting and Trump and all those guys wanting to go after the oil, well, the truth is that they're telling the truth, right? They want to go after that oil. That's their whole gig. And what they're not telling you is how much it costs to get that oil, right? That's what they're not telling you. They're not telling you the truth. They're not saying that in lieu of healthcare, in lieu of roads, in lieu of bridges, we want to go after this oil to cut 4.5% of the total oil that China consumes. That's like China will just get 4.5% more from Russia or 4.5% more from Middle East. Done. It's literally hitting a switch for them. It's not even a thing. So also, there's the defending of 900 miles of pipelines that we're going to have to put in. So it's defending the workers that are working on those pipelines. Because I just have a real strong feeling that the Venezuelan people aren't going to roll over and just let us take it. I mean, unless we pay them to, which is more money that's coming out of taxpayers' pockets, right? That's what the Republicans are always talking about. Yeah. If the GOP wants to run on this, they're welcome to try. But if I was a Democratic candidate or a Democratic political consultant, oh, yeah, that's right, I am. I'd be digging their grave with this topic. They want to drop $500 billion of infrastructure into a foreign country. But they wouldn't give, they wouldn't extend your healthcare tax breaks. Sorry. Sorry, small business. Yeah, this is not a hard sell. Maduro is a side act. He's actually a front. He's a front man. The guy was a bus driver. He's not even a serious person. It's all the people behind him, the people who don't want to be on, the Venezuelan currency, the people who are actually in charge of Venezuela, which are just a bunch of bad actors. So you got to go after them now. Where does it end? It ends with us probably putting boots on the ground, losing American soldiers, and spending another $1 trillion on a useless war that cut 4.5% of the oil out of China that they immediately got from somewhere else. That's how this ends. Because we've seen this movie before. So I hope everyone is having a fun week. But this is part 3 of my Venezuela war series. This is the oil question. The fact is, there's no facts here. All right. I mean, there's no oil. No real, unless you want to spend $1 trillion. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you later. And I'm appreciating the comments and really appreciate the support. I hope everyone, has a good day and just take it one day at a time. It's going to be a really crazy 2026. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Check me out on all the different platforms. All right. I'll talk to you later.